Hey everybody, Professor Hill here. So, this is a case that I wrote with Marshall about his farm in 2010. Or actually, he presented it at a conference, and we won the award for the best presentation. I'm going to use it as the tool or background for any examples that I put up for different sections of the marketing plan. The farm was started in 1920. Morris Epstein moved his family up from New York City, bought a plot of land in a sleepy town of Simsbury. The main cash crop was shade tobacco. That's the tobacco used to make wrappers for cigars. And Connecticut's one of the leading providers of that, surprisingly. And they had chickens and cows, and kind of a normal farm you think of. In 1948, Marshall's dad took over the farm. He changed the focus of the farm by going retail, selling vegetables, and also doing some wholesale in the town of West Hartford, which was a much larger town, about 15-minute, 20-minute drive from there. And a matter of fact, at that time, they lived in West Hartford. That's where Marshall grew up. Um, when he and his wife had kids, he worked full time at Pratt and Whitney and was a part time farmer. In 1983, Marshall was married, a father, um, and had been working in the banking business and marketing for a while. He kind of took over the farm as we'll call him the managing partner. And at the same time, to have summers free to really work on the farm, he became a full time marketing professor at AIC. And then over time, they kept the West Hartford location. And also, as Simsbury grew from a sleepy town to a more substantial town, they opened up a farm stand right at the farm. I'm going to play a video of Marshall's farm, and the music will probably be pretty loud behind it. But if you've never been there, it gives you an idea what it's like. So what happened? In 2011, in the winter, unexpectedly, Rosedale lost its lease for its farm stand in West Hartford, where they had been for a long time, ever since his father had switched the business over to retail. They lost 20% of their revenue, 15% of their profit. And you could say West Hartford was one of the best areas in terms of market potential. It's a big town with very good demographics. The money was important to their operation in terms of they had just started a winery a couple of years ago, and they were, kind of fell into organically, I guess was the word I'll use, doing events. So the money from West Hartford really helped to fund that. And a couple of years before that, they had sold their land development rights. So the farm would always stay a farm. Nobody could build houses on there and things like that. So they'd use that money to seed the winery. So for them to get more capital, they'd have to go out and borrow it, which is expensive. One reason why Marshall and his wife Lynn expanded into the winery and were ready to do more events was it's tough making money as a farmer. The weather is really, the climate's a big deal. It's unpredictable, uncontrollable, um, and it can really hurt your production and your profitability. If the weather is bad for growing crops or keeps people away from the farm stands, it really hurts. Sometimes when the weather's really good and everybody has a bumper crops, it pushes down profitability because you can't charge as much because there's more supply than demand. So from that standpoint, the weather is a huge factor. And then cash flow. You have running a farm, you have expenses year round. They really, ramp up, in the 3 or 4 months before you start planting. Um, and but you only, make money from May to maybe October, depending upon what you're doing. So you have a year's worth of expenses. You have to put up your money up front early, and then it takes a while for you to get that money back in. So many farmers, most farmers, have to borrow. They have a line of credit, and that costs money and interest. So it's a difficult business. Rosedale's business philosophy. First of all, the target market, people who have the means and willingness to purchase high quality food, entertainment, and other products. Simsbury and the surrounding area are all very affluent towns. Most of their business is retail, though they do have some wholesale accounts. And those wholesale accounts, in order to get Rosedale product, have to promote the brand. So they put a sign up on the restaurant table or in the menu or in the store. Um, they're positioning their brand as the highest quality, not only in terms of the quality of the food, but the experiences, the service, and the pricing. They get the most amount of money for corn, tomatoes, berries, um, compared to their competitors. They're always concerned about growing the Rosedale brand name. They want to build brand equity. That was what was behind a lot of the idea with the winery and the events, that they have a strong brand and they can leverage that to help them establish those two revenue streams. Their focus is always on the customer. Um, and it starts with customer acquisition, finding new ways to get customers. Part of the winery and the events help bring new customers to the farm. And surprising, Simsbury is a fairly affluent suburb, so there's a lot of turnover. There's families, but there's a lot of turnover because once the kids get old enough and they leave for college, a lot of the remaining adults, the parents, move. So there are always new people coming in. While they have a beautiful location, and it's pretty close to the main drag in Simsbury, it's not convenient to get to, and most people don't drive by it on a regular basis. So, not everybody in Simsbury is aware of Rosedale, and certainly not everybody has gone there. So, there's actually a pretty big untapped market there. Customer development. They're always looking to expand what they can sell and have for services. So, not only do they sell, food, I should say, produce and berries and fruits that they grow, they also sell the same type of stuff they get from other farmers. They also sell some finished goods. Started selling that in their farm in 2010. And then customer retention. So they don't have, or they didn't have at that point, a formal loyalty program, but they're always trying to go out of their way to give their customers more. And a big part of their business at that time were CSAs, which stand for Community Supported Agriculture. Families or individuals would buy, commit to buy $500 worth of goods from the farm and get it on a weekly basis during the season. And so Rosedale would always make sure that people got more than their allotment. So they rewarded them with extra product, and it was also a good way for them to test out new products for the farm stand and other things like that. So operations in 2010, two farm stands, Simsbury and West Hartford, corn and tomatoes and their berries, they're leading sellers. They'd already begun to supplement their produce and fruits with stuff purchased at other farms that they didn't grow, and also with baked goods and other types of goods they thought would complement what they were selling there. Simsbury accounted for 55% of all Rosedale revenue, and West Hartford, it should say 20% there, but that was what they did. The winery was launched in 2007. A lot of big startup costs. They sold their wine on premise and conducted a lot of wine tastings for a nominal fee. And they were fortunate in that wine tasting became a really popular social activity, especially with women, traveling to the different wineries around there and having fun. Uh, they're able to help. They're helped by the agricultural marketing program put on by the state, and the winery accounted for 13% of their revenue. Events on the farm also started to kick in with more frequency. Um, they had done corporate and large groups before. Oftentimes, people in the area who worked at the corporation would go to the farm or were a regular customer, and they would make the arrangement. They'd ask if they could have a retreat or a customer or an employee appreciation event at the farm. Um, Again, a customer started the first chef to farm dinner. So restaurants would uh, go to the farm, have an event where they cook the food there, and under a big tent, in the warm weather, have a full course dinner. And obviously, Rosedale collected on the event, and also the different restaurants doing the cooking had to use a certain amount of Rosedale uh, vegetables or other produce and wine. Um, and so that was a nice gig for them. And then people started to want to get wedded, get married on farms. And so they have a beautiful barn and they're already doing events. So that, again, kind of organically grew on their own by people asking if they could get married there. And so they hopped on that as an opportunity. Matter of fact, my oldest son and daughter in law got married there. So events in 2010 accounted for 6% of the revenue. They did have a hydroponic greenhouse. They used it to grow bib lettuce and other types of vegetables that nobody had around, or perhaps a certain restaurant or group of restaurants really wanted and would be paid top dollar for. It was successful initially, and they got a grant to help fund the construction, but it was pretty technical. There were some issues, and then other people, especially larger businesses, even supermarkets and even Walmart, often sold some of the same product. So even though it did contribute 3% of the revenue, it was pretty much at its end. Here are some of their financials. You can see the different business kind of units, we would call it, over on the chart to the left. So Simsbury brings in the most money. We just talked about West Hartford, the winery events, and the greenhouse. You can see the relative growth. Events were growing fast, and so was the winery. And then over the chart to the right is more about their profit margins and how much profit they made. So the Simsbury location, made a lot of profit, not the most surprisingly, and their profit margin was 5.4%. West Hartford had, a smaller amount, but their net profit margin, I'm sorry, after all expenses was, a little bit higher. The winery had great revenue, $105,000, but with a lot of startup costs and other things, the net profit was only 3.8%, but for only being in the third year of the winery and having to buy a lot of grapes to supplement to make the wines because they couldn't grow enough yet, that's pretty good. And then you can see events. So the number revenue is relatively small. The gross profit margin, the profit margin, I keep saying gross profit margin, but the net profit is really high for them because they don't really have to do too much. And because it's such a lovely venue and they've had some success, the different organizations that go there or restaurants are willing to pay, and weddings are expensive. And you can see the greenhouse is kind of just dribbling along and not really something that's going to look like it's going to grow into much of a business. And there are their total figures right there. The Rosedale business environment. Summary of the situational analysis. So farming keeps getting more expensive. Equipment, chemicals, supplies, increased regulation. So it's hard. And even though there are improvements in farming technology, small farms really have a problem getting bigger because there's no land available. People started, wanting more and more organic foods, especially, fruits and vegetables. So many farmers started switching their crops over to organic methods in the hopes that they could get higher prices. At the same time, local and regional grocery stores, Stop and Shop and Big Y, um, national chains like Whole Foods, mass merchandisers like Target and Walmart and Aldi, and Trader Joe's, they can buy local produce and sell it, but it's not really local, not local to Connecticut, not local to where the store is. It might come from a farm in Massachusetts, New York, New Hampshire, or Maine, but they're able to say that it's local. Most people don't know the difference. So why go to the farm stand when you can get local produce where you do your regular shop? Agritourism started to become more popular. Farmers are figuring out different ways to get people to come to the farm, either to buy products there or pay for experiences. And this is something that was really kicked off by millennials because they're looking for experiences. Uh, Drinking wine is growing in popularity. At the same time, so is the number of vineyards to take advantage of that growth. Wine tastings, as we said before, are really popular social activity. And even in a small state like Connecticut, there are 20 wineries within an hour drive of Rosedale farms and vineyards. So there's a lot of competition. And then locally, in the local market, um, there's a lot of competition. There's 20 or more farm stands or farmers markets where different farmers sell their goods within 15 miles, maybe a 20-minute drive of Rosedale. Their largest competitor is 2 miles down the same road in a different town, Bloomfield, but down in Big Hills. So, but they're open year round. They have local produce that they grow or other local produce they buy, but also they feature canned goods and other types of products so you can do more, a wider variety of shopping there. And they have lower prices. Other competitors were specializing. Like we said before, organic and specialty produce, whether it's just hot peppers or different varieties of certain vegetables that are difficult to find. And then more and more farmers were offering non-farm products, ice cream, a petting zoo, other types of events, and extending the community support of agriculture to non-farm products. So you pay $500, and you're also going to get beer from a local brewery and maybe coffee from a local coffee shop that does its own roasting. And if there's a local slaughterhouse or butcher, they'll give you products. So they're trying to make their offering and getting people to put money up front more attractive. So there's actually a lot of things going on in the marketing environment at that point in time. So what were Rosedale's alternatives? There's no reason they couldn't open up a new retail farm stand in West Hartford in a different location, or even some other town. Um, the one in West Hartford was doing really well. It didn't close because their customers weren't happy. So maybe they could even expand their sales there. Like I said, it's a very attractive town in terms of demographics. There's a lot of people, over 50,000 people at that point, and the average income was well above the average for Connecticut. Or they could go into a different town. The whole area, even though there's lots of competition, are all relatively affluent. Or they could just double down at the Simsbury location. That was their number one moneymaker. So, maybe people from West Hartford would travel. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they could use an incentive to get them there. Um, Maybe they could get more of the local people in Simsbury who were unaware of Rosedale or had never been there, get them to come to the farm and convert them and develop them. Or they could look for some new products that they could sell, perhaps to attract a different group. They could certainly go organic, or especially farming, brings a lot of costs, but they could charge more theoretically. But you want to ask yourself, if people are already paying a premium price, would they be willing to pay even more? And organic farming doesn't mean that the produce will taste better. So, you know, Rosedale Farm was by far the leader in sales of corn and tomatoes because their stuff tasted better than everybody else's. And they wouldn't want to lose that. But certainly they could do some organic farming. They could try to put more money, if they can find it, into the wine operations. Buy more grapes, increase their output, maybe do some more formal marketing to try to attract more people to speed up the development of the winery. The winery's revenue is good, gross profit is tough, and their wine bar where they do their tastings is only open during the growing season or when they're in selling, so May to October. And the last alternative on this list, at least, there's other ones, I guess, they could try to do more events. Um, what should they focus on? You know, can they partner with any restaurants or corporations or groups um, to have regular events? The events were quite profitable, um, but if they kind of fell into events organically, but if they tried to crank out more events, 20 or 30 during the season, could they still do that and farm? They have to hire more people. Do they need to hire somebody to try to arrange and organize the events? Right now, it's Lynn, Marshall's wife, who takes care of all that, and especially weddings, uh, which are having outdoor weddings at farms is very popular, but it takes a lot of extra coordination because of all the different other vendors and needs that a wedding requires. So there's a lot of different opportunities for them. Trying to figure out the best one is tough.